This lesson is a study of the first 3 chapters of the book of Ezra, who was a prophet and who was a descendant of Aaron. His nephew Joshua, who is also called Yeshua, same name, is the high priest during these events recorded by Ezra. Ezra discusses the return of Judah to rebuild the temple. In the book of Nehemiah, they build the wall. E.W. Bullinger claims that Nehemiah should have been first, the wall was built first, and some say Ezra is the first, that the temple needed to be rebuilt before the wall. We will see evidence of the verses causing that controversy as we move through. Some of the book of Ezra is written in the Syriac or the Chaldee language, the language of the Babylonians. The date 536 BC. If we take Bullinger's 110-year correction, because he corrected, because some of the kings, if they served only 3 months, it was held to be a year. And this correction takes into account the full years counted for kings who serve a part of a year. And they're coming out of confusion, Babylon, meaning confusion. Nebuchadnezzar took them into captivity, and he left some there, but he took the cream of the crop out of the citizens into Babylon. And remember that another name for Satan is the king of Babylon. And Cyrus was prophesied 137 years before his birth, and we are going to read that he is the king of Persia who allowed them to leave. His name, according to the Smith Bible Dictionary, means son. So Jeremiah 29:10, God says that the gathering will take place. They, of course, went into the Babylonian captivity 200 years after the northern tribes were carried away. Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, saying, and put it also in writing, saying. And of course, as I said, Cyrus was prophesied 137 years before his birth. Verse 2. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. And of course, after the third siege of Nebuchadnezzar, there was nothing left. And we see here in Cyrus an humble kind of person. 3. Who is there among all you of his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem. Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, we learn in 2 Chronicles 36:23, 4. And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver and with gold and with goods and with beasts, besides the freewill offering for the house of God that is in Jerusalem. So here we see Cyrus is helping, giving material and animals, and we are reminded that if we are doing God's work, that He will provide the bricks. Verse 5. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, and all them whose spirit God had raised up to go up to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem. And of course, not only did you have the chiefs and the tribal leaders, but amongst the priests were Nethinims, who had worked their way in earlier. They are peoples who pretended to have walked a long, long way, and they made their clothes look worn and torn, and they offered to be of service, and they started out carrying wood and water, and before long they were scribes, and by this time they were masquerading as priests. 6. And all they that were about them strengthened their hands with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, and with beasts, and with precious things, besides all that was willingly offered. So the first siege took out all the precious metals out of Jerusalem, and the second and third, they got the brass. They even broke apart that big brazen sea, huge, almost swimming pool size basin of brass that the priests used to wash themselves in. And you see that the people have responded and are giving toward the building of this temple. Verse 7. Also Cyrus the king brought forth the vessels of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought forth out of Jerusalem, and had put them in the house of his gods. That happened back in the first siege. And Belshazzar, who was an offspring of Nebuchadnezzar, had a drunken party, and he used these very vessels to hold wine, and a hand wrote on the wall, the hand of God, and it said, rather in paraphrase, your kingdom has been counted and it's finished, and you've been weighed and found wanting. And he was so distraught that he wet his pants, and he died that night. So don't fool with holy things. 8. Even those did Cyrus, king of Persia, bring forth by the hand of Mutharethdoth, the treasurer, and numbered them into Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. Sheshbazzar, that would have been a Chaldean name for Zerubbabel. It is not a Hebrew sound, and these often, if you remember, Daniel and his friends were renamed with Babylonian names. So this person here is none other than Zerubbabel, Sheshbazzar. 6. And this is the number of them: 30 chargers of gold, 1,000 chargers of silver, 9 and 20 knives. 10. The 30 basins of gold, silver basins of a second sort, 410, and other vessels 1,000. Now this is quite a bit of gold and silver, and of course Solomon gathered much of this from Ophir. In fact, in Solomon's time, silver was so plentiful that it was just considered no more than so much rocks. 11. All the vessels of gold and of silver were 5,400. All these did Sheshbazzar bring up with them of the captivity that were brought up from Babylon unto Jerusalem. That is the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2, verse 1. Now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity, of those which had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon, and came again into Jerusalem and Judah, every one into his city. Now, they are not independent peoples. They are a province of Persia. Cyrus will appoint a governor, and we'll all go to Jerusalem? No. For 42,360 went out of Babylon on the first trip. 2. Which came unto Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, and Sarah, Relilah, Mordecai, Bilshan, and Mizpar, Bigvai, Rehum, Baanah, the number of the men of the people of Israel. And as I said, Yeshua, or Joshua, as he is called other words, is a nephew of Ezra. Mordecai here is not the Mordecai that we read of in Ezra. Zerubbabel means born in Babel, and he had been, of course, serving Cyrus during this captivity. In Zechariah 4, we learn that he held the plumb line when the altar was established. These names here, beginning, tell all the names. The first 3 through 35 are, of course, the first 2 are the Ezra and the persons who are important. And then 3 through 25 are the people of Benjamin and Judah. Verses 36 through 42 are the priests and the Levites. And the priests, of course, would be offspring of Aaron. Not all Levites are priests, of course. Other Levites had work to do in the temple and in service, but high priest had to have been from the offspring of Aaron. Pick it up if you could wish to read that on your own. Then we will pick it up in verse 43. The Nethinim, the children of Zihah, the children of Hasupha, the children of Tabbaoth, oath. Nethinim, that's not a Hebrew name. And of course, I told you that they came in pretending to have come a long way, and they took over in 1 Chronicles 2:55 while they were acting as scribes. And then they worked their way in to assume. Priests were rather lazy, I guess, and they worked their way into being priests. Skip to verse 48. The children of Reziah, the children of Nekoda, the children of Garzam. These are the Nethinim that are mentioned. They and their servant, they claim to be Judah, 59 through 63, give their descendants. They claim to be of Judah. Some claim to be priests. But 59, we learn that no, they were not at all. They had no genealogy. Of course, they could say, well, the records were lost while we were in there, and they are trying to slip in. So we will pick it up in 59. And these were they which went up from Tel Milah, Tel Haha, Cherubah, Adah, Dan, Emer, and they could not show their father's house and their seed, whether they were of Israel, because they weren't. Many of these were not only Nephilim, but they were Kenites. Kenites, of course, are the offspring of Cain. Nekoda, who is that? Nethinims. Nekoda means a temple servant, and that's what they came in as. Pick it up in verse 60. The children of Delaha, the children of Tobiah, the children of Nekoda, 652. Okay, 652 of these Nethinim. 61, and the children of the priests, the children of Habalah, the children of Koz, the children of Hazarlah, which took a wife of the daughters of Barzillai, the Gideonite, and was called after their names. Okay, Barzillai, was a close counselor to David, and she was from the house of Manasseh. And how could this person be a priest when a Levite priest would have a Levite wife? And likely they took the name of the woman's family to fill a pocketbook. Okay. 62. These sought their register among those that were reckoned by genealogy, but they were not found. Therefore were they, as polluted, put from the priesthood. Okay, they could not prove, even though they were claiming so, they could not protect their or prove their genealogy, and out of protection for the priesthood, they are not allowed. 63. And that Teshartha said unto them that they should not eat of the most holy things till there stood up a priest with Urim and Thummim, and those were those stones carried in the high priest's breast pocket. And so they are not going to be allowed. Tishata, that was the Persian governor that Cyrus appointed. Okay, 64. The whole congregation together was 42,303 score. Yes, exactly a number. And they came out with Zerubbabel and Ezra, and then we'll have, when we get to chapter 8 of this book, another group. How many of these were Levites? There was not a one in the second movement, but Nethanim's. Priests grew lazy, and many stayed in Babylon to enjoy a comfortable life rather than make this trip. 65. Besides their servants and their maids, of whom there were 7,337, and there were among them 200 singing men and singing women. The singing men and women were not Levitical priests who sang. Those would have been musicians, were descendants of Asaph. These are the kinds of singers that would have been hired for a wedding or a celebration. They would not have been participating in the worship. 66. Their horses were 736, their mules 245. 67. Their camels 435, their asses 6,720. So you see that they have been very generous in helping these people leave to go build that temple. And of course, Cyrus had the hand of God on him. 68. And some of the chief of the fathers, when they came to the house of the Lord, which is at Jerusalem, offered freely for the house of God to set it up in his place. Very generous. The chiefs and leaders here gave very freely. Verse 70 to complete this chapter. So the priests and the Levites and some of the people and the singers and the partners and the Nethanim dwelt in their cities, and all Israel in their cities. So you see, they went home to their place they had been given in the promised land. The land is not theirs. They will be under Cyrus. Now, chapter 3 will discuss the building of the burnt offering altar, and will be done in order to reinstate worship. Chapter 3, verse 1. And when the 7th month was come, and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered themselves together as one man in Jerusalem. Now, this 7th month is an important month, and it is Tisri in the Hebrew, and it is when the Feast of Tabernacles is celebrated. The very first day of that month is a feast day, and it is called the Feast of Trumps. On that day, the priest blew the shofar, and then on the 5th day was the Day of Atonement. And that Day of Atonement was to cover any sin that had not been forgiven or confessed. And the high priest went into the Holy of Holies. He is the only person ever allowed in. He went in on that day. His robe had bells sewed to the hem in the case something happened and he had to be fished out. But anyway, he went in to atone for sins. Now, the feast, this feast, Atonement Day, there was a veil that separated the main part of the temple from the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was, And it was this veil that split from top to bottom at 3 o'clock on the day that Jesus was crucified and died. Now, on the 15th of this Tisseré, they celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles with a 7-day feast. And then on the 8th day, it was a Sabbath, but it was not part of the Feast of Tabernacles. Verse 2, then stood up Yeshua, and also the name of Jesus. It's also Joshua, the son of Zazadok, and his brethren the priest, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, and built the altar of God of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. And as I said, Yeshua is a nephew and of Ezra. And also Josadah here is Ezra's nephew. And they're in the family of Zariah, who was killed. And Zariah was the father of Ezra. 3. And they set the altar upon his bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries, and they offered burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord, even burnt offerings morning and evening. So you are seeing the worship began, daily offerings morning and evening, and they rebuilt that altar on the basis in exact same place in Solomon's time. 4. They kept also the Feast of Tabernacles as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings by number according to the custom, as the duty of every day required. Those in the northern in captivity came in. There were some left in the northern part of what was Israel, but these persons brought in others, and they were called Samaritans. That phrase, Samaritans, arose at this time, and they were mixed people of several genealogies and religions, and there was no wall there on the north part of the city, flat and very easy to approach. 4. They kept also the Feast of Tabernacles as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings by number according to the custom in the duty of every day required. So they did that morning and that evening offering, and that was prescribed in Leviticus. 5. And afterward offered the continual burnt offering, both of the new moons and of the set feast of the Lord that were consecrated, and of every one that willingly offered a free will offering unto the Lord. Now, the new moon, that would have had to do with only 1 month. It would not have been every new moon, but that new moon at moon meaning month, the first day of the month of Tisseré, the Feast of Trumps. 7. I think I skipped 6. From the first day of the 7th month began they to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord, but the foundation of the temple of the Lord was not yet laid out. So the very first thing they did was to get that altar built. 7. They gave money also unto the masons, to the carpenters, and meat and drink and oil unto them of Sidon and to them of Tyre, to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the sea of Joppa, according to the grant that they had of Cyrus the king of Persia. And these agreements go back to Solomon and David for materials. Joppa is a seaport on the Mediterranean, and it is there today, and it is called Joppa. And these cedars of Lebanon were roped into logs and floated across the Mediterranean to Joppa, just as it was in the days of Solomon. 8. Now in the 2nd year of their coming unto the house of God at Jerusalem, in the 2nd month began Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Yeshua the son of Sazadak, and the remnant of their brethren the priests and the Levites, and all that were come out of the captivity into Jerusalem, and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and upward, to set forward the work of the house of the Lord. Now, in Leviticus, they were, the Levites originally were 30 years old, and then it was changed to 25, and now it is going to be at age 20. 9. Then stood Yeshua, once again the high priest, with his sons and his brethren, Kadmiel and his sons, the sons of Judah, together to set forward the workmen in the house of God, the sons of Henadad, with their sons and their brethren, and the Levites. And this in the 2nd chapter, this Hezadad had a different name. Same person, they switched names. 10. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, they set the priests in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the son of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise the Lord after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And of course, it was David who set this up, and the instructions came from God to David. It was said the plans were on David. So the plans for the temple directly from God. 11. And they sang together by course in praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. And this shout is prophesied in Jeremiah 33:10. Verse 11. But many of the priests and Levites and chief of the fathers, who were ancient men that had seen the first house when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, wept with a loud voice, and many shouted aloud for joy. This would have been these persons who would have been maybe 10 to 20 years old when the beginning of the captivity. They would have been quite old now, but they would have remembered that first temple. 13. So that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people, for the people shouted with a loud shout and was heard afar off. Now, we are going to see that it was heard all the way to Samaria. And as I said, Samaritans were not heard of until after the captivity, and they claimed to be Israelites. Some had remained there after they were carried away by Assyria. And these Samaritans had a temple on Mount Gerizim, and they took it upon themselves to rewrite the first chapters of Moses. And these are intermarried, those who were Israel, with foreigners that had been planted by Assyria. So you have quite a mix here of persons and mixed up religion. And if you remember the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well, she speaks of Mount Gerizim, a Samaritan, but not an Israelite. This video has been an outreach of the Essex Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri, and the Crossroads Global Methodist Church in Dexter, Missouri.